Welcome. You are listening to Creative Inquiry FM. Creative Inquiry FM. Thanks for joining us this afternoon on Creative Inquiry FM. We are very lucky today to be interviewing a panel of three creatives. Firstly, we have in the studio songwriter Bronnie Harry. Bronnie, thanks for joining us. Yeah, hi Creative Inquiry FM. Thanks for having me. Bronnie, you've been writing songs since you were a little girl. Tell us about your practice. Well, my songwriting process, I guess, could be considered a little genius in nature, or a repair project, if you will. Taylor and Littleton put in their writings contemporary identities of creativity and creative work that they say the onus to be good enough to be the source of creative work opens up an alternative project for creative workers to repair the self and make good deficits. So I guess, that would really go on to explain my song Good Enough and probably why I embarked in the whole, creative industries in the first place. One could say that, my idea generation phase of songwriting is similar to the poet Ruth Stone's creative process. She talks about, the idea hitting her in the most involuntary fashion and the most unprepared times. And Stone explains how her creative process she might be working in a field and then she'll need to run to the house to try and catch the idea before it leaves in search of another poet. And I certainly relate to that. Wow, fascinating. So what do you think this says about your identity? Well, it probably says that I'm a relatively emotional and sensitive and empathetic human being who is largely affected by events and relationships around me. So what would you say is the origin of your ideas? Well, that's the thing. Creative FM, there's sort of like of some divine intervention, I believe, so something that's completely out of my control. But surely you have some influences though? Yeah, totally. Peter Allen. I've been to cities that never close down, from New York to Rio and old London town. But no matter how far or how wide I roam, I still call Australia home. Do you know it? Oh yes, I love it. Yeah, everyone seems to know that song. So I guess Peter Allen's had a huge influence on me with my songwriting, particularly around the chords, chords having different bass notes to the tonic, for example. But of course, influences have come subconsciously from all, they come from all around us really. But really the initial idea, sort of hits me, sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes when I'm out. And lastly, Bronnie, what is the process for you to, explore your songwriting? Well, of course, there's always, looking at other artists. But as I said, really, it's something from deep within that comes out as opposed to me inquiring and exploring or trying to collect other ideas to write. Does that make sense? It absolutely does, Bronnie, and thank you. I'm going to direct these questions now to my next guest and panellist, recording artist Harrison the Artist. Harrison the Artist, it is an absolute pleasure to have you join the show. What an honour. I have followed you since you released your album back in 2016. Welcome. Yeah, thanks Creative Inquiry FM. It's lovely to be here. Harrison the Artist, do you resonate at all with songwriter Bronnie Harry's thoughts on the creative process with being a recording artist, or do you experience your practice a little differently? Look, I certainly resonate with Bronnie Harry's songwriting creative process, though I would probably say that my process and application is probably a little different. How so? Well, to give you an example, I'm currently completing a global recording project where I source and explore sounds that are authentic and only found in certain parts of the world. Do tell! Well, earlier this year I was recording in India learning about the different Eastern methods of structure and rhythm and technique, specifically to the tabla and other Indian percussion instruments. Worked with an amazing tabla player from his family was one of the best musical families coming out of Rajasthan. Last year I was recording at Sony's headquarters in Tokyo, Japan, and that's probably one of the best experiences I've ever had. Later this year I'll be recording in Europe, and then in September in New York. And I've just had confirmation this week about the opportunity to record ancient Tibetan instruments in 2020. Interesting! So do tell me, what does the practice involve? Well, largely it's a pursuit of understanding how music is different in different parts of the world, and what sounds can only be sourced from certain regions of the world, and how this affects culture and ultimately affects human emotion and action. It's also in the creative pursuit of generating something completely new and completely original, and not based on, any previous sound, and then obviously to then go on and sell it. And what does this say about your identity? Well, it says that I'm pretty curious in nature, I guess. I'm interested in more than just what's been put in front of me by teachers or my upbringing. I would say that I probably have a thirst to want to understand music on a global scale, not just not just Western methods that we've been taught at school. And I've got a particularly keen interest in rhythm. Wow. Well, in that case, you are going to love our next panellist. We are very lucky to have with us rhythmical extraordinaire Bron Harrison. Bron, welcome. Thanks, Creative Inquiry FM. So tell us a little bit about your drumming. You're a drummer and percussionist and a teacher. Is that right? Yeah, spot on. I have a company, Be Rhythmic, which has a team of tutors, and we all deliver high quality education in the area of drum kit and percussion. So tell us what your practice involves. Well, it's a little bit different to Bronnie Harry or Harrison the artists, but I guess it's sort of a mixture of contemporary drum kit methods as well as orchestral-based learning. Right. Tell me more. Well, unlike Bronnie Harry, where the ideas just hit her out of nowhere, or Harrison the artist that is actively seeking new authentic sounds and recording them into composition, my practice is largely based on existing material, syllabi, and building upon learning from what's found in existing books, for example. So what approach is in these books? Well, that's the thing. I do have a choice over which books that I work from, and I generally try and choose material that has a broad repertoire of styles. Every drummer of all levels can play a rock beat, so I tend to try and explore more percussive-based styles like Latin, jazz, things that are a little different, or I'll adapt things like a 3-part drum kit piece and play it on African drums. Or another piece that we recently played was a junk percussion piece where we all play on junk. I tend to veer away from your quintessential rock beat drummer. Right. Interesting. So what do you think that this is about your identity as a musician and an artist? Well, a couple of things. Firstly, I don't like to be bound to one style. And secondly, I believe that it makes you a better player. So if you have a broader understanding of different styles, I believe it makes you a better player. And thirdly, I guess it shows that I'm adaptable. And what kind of research do you do to help your practice? Well, I'm constantly looking for new material, books, as well as old books. And when I come across a new drummer, I try to understand their influences or style. Or it might be more appropriate to say that I try and understand the origin of their groove, or perhaps their influences, or where it came from, or what part of the world it came from. Fascinating. Well, I hate to finish up this terrific interview with our panelists, but we are out of time. But please join me next week, because next week we will be talking to business owner and creative Bronwyn Harrison, sonic branding expert Bronnie Mary, video editor Bronwana Harrison. So stay tuned. You are listening to Creative Inquiry FM. Creative Inquiry FM.